Good morning, guys. So today is May 3rd, and we are in Esther chapter 2. So now our reading plan has actually slowed down. So we're able to, really get into the chapters a little bit more. So today we start off with seeing that King Xerxes, like he had made such a harsh judgment based on the advice of his other people in chapter 1. So now in chapter 2, it seems like now it's saying when his anger subsided. So I think the fact that it's starting out with that, it just shows how much he was led by different things. Because remember, he was somebody who liked to lavish, who liked to celebrate like a ridiculous amount and like to lavish on these ridiculous things. So I'm hoping you took your time and read chapter 1 to get that more in detail. But also now we're seeing that he was somebody who allowed his anger to control him. So those are the things of like a king, but I think for a lot of us, those are just characteristics of a man, right? And I'm saying not a man as in a man and woman, but as a person. Like those are characteristics that we could easily fall into and allow them to lead us, right? And so we see that now that his anger subsided, it's like now he actually began thinking about what actually transpired. So his men thought the best thing to do was to now go ahead and find him a new wife to replace her because the bottom line in that realm, she was replaceable, right? So now what they did was they set out to have like the people go out and somebody was chosen from each town to bring like a beautiful virgin into the palace, right? And it wasn't like that replacement was going to be something that was immediate because there was a process that each of the women would have to go through. And it was almost like a year of beauty treatments. It was like, and then they would put on a special diet because, again, it's like during that time, it was like she had to be somebody who was very pleasing to his eyes because remember, please look at who we're talking about with this, but this was something in place. I guess maybe that was one of the things that stood out about these kings also is the beauty of their women, which was why Vashti was something that was considered beautiful and something to actually show off in the presence of other men, right? And so we see now we meet like a new family, and it's Mordecai, and he actually has custody of his cousin, right? And her name is Hadassah, right? And I just thought that this was so significant because we know the book is Esther, and we know that she was known as Esther. So something about Esther allow her to pass as non-Jewish. So the name Hadassah was probably something that was linked more to her culture, to her heritage, which is why Esther was another name that was used because Mordecai and Esther, they lived in exile. They were part of the people who had got exiled from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar. I'm so glad to be taking this walk through the Bible because it's making a lot more sense. Thank you, Jesus, right? For this reading plan that was provided to me by Thrive, right? Always got to give shout outs to this Bible that I'm coming from. Um, but I just think that that's something that's so significant because as things go, we see that she comes in and she's placed with somebody who immediately uh likes her. So, make sure that she's taken care of and kind of like set apart, right? And so it was like one of the things that is showing with Esther slash Hadassah, right, is that she listened to her uncle, like her cousin uncle. That's what I'm gonna call him. Lord Jesus, help me, right? And it was one of those things where she, I guess, in her young age, being raised and kind of understanding their situation, on so many levels, it seemed like she had to be grateful and have a good relationship with Mordecai because this allowed her to be somebody who was able to listen and to respect his wishes. And that's something that a lot of people, like, when you have somebody young in your care, you want to have a relationship, not with a person just do what you say, but that there's an actual respect for who you are. So now the people can actually benefit from what it is that you want to do with them. So because she was reared in this manner, now that she goes into the king's palace and she's placed with other people, she already has that level of humility, which is what I'm going to call it, because we realized at this time that she was very much a young woman and that she was still dependent on, whatever was going to happen with her elders. And so we see that she listened when they told her what she should put on, everything she should do. She listened, she was obedient. And so now we see that she's presented to the king, and it says that the king loved Esther more than any of the other women, who he was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen instead of Vashti. And I'm gonna just take a minute because he did have other wives. And it was one of those things, as she went through the process, then she was brought into the harem with the other wives. And one of the things that stood out to me today wasn't that just that he said he loved Esther more than any other woman. It said that he loved Esther more than any of the other young women. So it's a lot going on here. It's a lot going on here. But it's one of the things today, as I was going through it, I'm seeing the hands of God today more than ever. Because I think for so many situations, it's almost like people thought like it was the fact that she was beautiful, the fact that, she was given all of these treatments. Because I know a lot of women now, like, like that's one of the things when you're seeking marriage or like to enter into that, like a lot of us, we like to go to Esther and we realized that she had a year of beauty treatments, but it was one of those things where her beauty, her heart, and her level of humility and her understanding the people who loved her and who cared for her and wanted the best for her, and being able to rear and to have like a level of obedience for them, that she was able to be as successful as she was, right? And so now we see that she has had this great thing bestowed upon her. But my biggest thing today is to see the hand of God. Like, I think sometimes we look at the history that we read in the Bible and we see what people did and we respect what the people did. But it's like today, for the first time, I'm seeing the hand of God. Because remember, it's almost like they were in a separate place because they had been exiled, but that there was still people who kept in relationship with him and were able to still walk in his ways. So, in being able to still walk in his ways, he was able to still be there with them and actually use them to orchestrate different things, because he knew he's a God that stands ahead of us. He knows what's coming. So it's almost like when you line up with him, it's almost like you get to walk out his will and be a blessing, not just to yourself and your family, who Esther was, but also to God. So now, as we go, we get to see a little bit more with Mordecai, because it seems that, as long as Esther was in the palace, she kept to her identity secret, because that was something that was advised against. And it just brings me back to a movie, or just things, something like with African Americans. And I'm just going to say it. But I know that there were seasons where people were able to pass for another race, which made them a lot more accepting. And they normally stood out because there was definitely something different about them. But because they, they didn't have the darker complexion, it was something that just allowed them a different lifestyle. And I'm just going to say, like, that was what Esther, like, she was somebody who stood out differently, very much connected to who she was, but stood out differently. And it was something that, was able to be used for the kingdom. That's what I'm going to say. It was being used for the kingdom, right? And so now we see that Mordecai had become a palace official. And that's what I'm saying. You got to see God's hand in this. Like, there's so many ways to read it and get caught up with like worldly thoughts or fleshly thoughts. But it's like, be in the spirit as you take in his word and see his spirit moving in these stories, because that's how you're going to get to see his spirit moving in your life, right? And so now it says that one day when Mordecai was on duty, at the king's gate, he overheard a conversation, and it was two of the king's eunuchs. And he actually went and he heard them discussing their plans to assassinate the king. And this is just one of the things where now we see how God is using this situation to help his people. But also, this was a situation that protected the king as well. So it's almost like that's how we get to operate sometimes when we're in places and we're not amongst believers. But it's almost like our presence is something that is designed to bring blessing to them as well. So it's like we must understand our role because now Mordecai was able to tell Esther. Esther was able to tell the king, and but she gave credit to Mordecai. And so at the end, we see that the two eunuchs now they were impaled, right? And then it ends the chapter saying that the book of history of the kings of Xerxes' reign, like other things are recorded. So this is recorded as well, right? And it's showing that when we take this, it's just a real history book, but now we get to have it in this because these are things, stories that's inspired by God so that we could see his spirit and we could understand how his desire to use us today. So I pray that you guys are digging in. I pray that you guys are spending time in prayer because I really feel like when we talk about that, like God is going to set a table in front of us, in front of our enemies. I believe that this is one of the things that we get to feast on. It's one of those things, like a lot of times we look at our enemies, and I'm just going to say, our battle is not against flesh and blood. So when we sit down and we open up the word, look at it as we're sitting at his table and we're having what's laid out for us before people. So I'm hoping that you guys are enjoying this time with God as much as I am. Love you, and I will see you later.